All right, so we are recording. Thank you everybody for joining again this week. This is our fifth of six technical assistance sessions. Today it's asset management for developers. So we've got with us today Joe Tandy from KMG Prestige and Amina Irving from Janasco Development. They're going to go over a presentation that they've put together to sort of talk about how they interact with each other, work with each other, all of that good stuff. Feel free to ask questions as the guys are talking. You can use the chat feature. I know a lot of folks have been using that in other sessions. So do that. And Josh and myself will be watching those. So if we see questions, Amin and Joe will make sure you see them. Also, feel free to unmute yourself and ask questions as you're going to. That shouldn't be a problem. Just wanted to take a minute again to recognize that this is technical assistance work done with the Detroit Preservation Group. We really appreciate all the work from the city of Detroit to put this group together because these have been pretty good sessions. I've been really impressed with them, and everybody should have seen the email I put out last week. We've got them linked to Senair's YouTube page now, so we will be adding this one to that as well after probably take a day or two. It's done by somebody else in my office, but that will be out there along with the other 4 that are there now. And then next week we have a year 15 session that will be recorded and put out there as well. So appreciate everybody coming. And Joe and Amin, I will turn it over to you guys.
Thanks, Mike. Joe, you want to throw up the PowerPoint presentation?
I will, Mike. Can you
share the?
Is it letting you share or no?
It is not.
All right, hold on. There we go. Oh, give that a whirl.
There we go.
And while Joe is working on that, so my name is Amin Irving. I'm the president, founder, CEO of Janasco Development Company. We currently own 29 properties, 2 pieces of vacant land with a capitalized value of a little over 450 million throughout the Midwest. That's who I am. Joe, you want to talk about yourself?
Absolutely, thanks. My name is Joe Tandy, Regional Vice President for KMG Prestige, management company throughout the Midwest, and we also manage for Amin. And here to kind of talk about our collaboration and how we work together.
Great. All right. Well, great. Thanks. So first, I think it's wise to talk about just the high level of how Janasco Development Company kind of looks at asset management. But before we start that, KMG Prestige manages 96% of the 3,100 units that we own, which shows that we have a great vote of confidence for KMG. I think we've been working with them for a little over 10 or 11 years now. And it's been a great relationship. And throughout that, decade worth of history, we've really been able to merge the visions of how Janasco Development Company wants to asset manage or looks at a property versus how KMG property manages a property. And a long time ago, there was this kind of aha moment that I saw and it wasn't with KMG, but there was this disconnect between property management being so focused on compliance, government compliance, and low-income housing tax credit rules. And from a developer's perspective, asset management, which really is, I don't know about other developers, but I'm very focused on, the operations of the business and how it relates to cash flow, value of the property, and an eventual back-end sale or recycling. So, a lot of times you have, does compliance trump returns? Does returns trump compliance, or should the two synergistically work together for a great property? And what's wonderful about the kind of like the Janasco KMG relationship is we were able to merge those two, right? That property compliance, of course, is number one, but a very close 1B is returns, and ensuring that we're really operating the project according to the closing pro forma. So, Joe, why don't you go to the next slide? So the way Janasco Development Company, you can click it again, the way Janasco Development Company looks at a project is there are 5 phases to the life cycle of a property. Go ahead and click it again. The first phase is acquisition. The second phase, you can keep clicking, is construction. The third phase is lease up. The fourth phase is stabilization. And the fifth phase is our disposition. So every single property that Janasco Development Company looks at, or every single community that we see the property and fits into one of these 5 phases. And then within those phases, just click maybe 5 times, within Janasco Development Company, we have sub-phases. And so we look at initial involvement, we do an analysis, we have an internal investment committee, we do due diligence and closing. And in my opinion, as a developer and owner, the acquisition phase is the most important phase because that's when we develop a strategy for the project going forward. But the second most important phase, in my opinion, some people will say it's different, is the stabilization phase. The stabilization phase is when we're actually implementing on a day-to-day basis the strategy that we developed during the acquisition phase. And it's the stabilization phase that we really are talking about today. That's where asset management is critical. During the stabilization phase at Janasco Development Company, we kind of have this green light, yellow light, red light approach. And what we do is we quantify the health every single month. We quantify the health of a property and we give it a score from 0 to 100. And you know, scores that are 80 and above, that's a green light property. Scores that are 60 to 80 to 79, that's a yellow, and anything below 60 is a red light property. And given the quantitative score is the level of scrutiny that we actually give to a property. You can go to the next slide. So our management, you know, our both GDC and KMG's management company expectations is that, of course, we always have green light properties, right? Oh, and make no mistake, even if we had a red light property, it doesn't mean that, you know, the sky is falling and you know, we can't make debt service payments. You know, I'm proud to be able to say that Janasco Development Company has never missed a mortgage payment or defaulted on any sort of its obligations, right? So red light properties for Janasco Development Company are very, very different than probably red light properties from a syndicator standpoint, because what we're trying to do is ensure that none of our properties get to the point where Synair or any other syndicator or investor is starting to look at it and it's on their watch and it's on their watch list. Our red light properties basically say, dude, you're trending in a negative direction. Let's look at this and get all hands on deck to make sure that we're not trending in a negative direction. And I want to say we've only had like 2 properties in a red light, but still, it's still paying its bills. It's just we're giving it very special attention. You know, what's here is pretty self-explanatory. I don't know, Joe, I'm not sure if you want to.
Yeah, I think one of the things that as you go through the process, making sure that between management and the developer, you focus on what the goals and the overall strategy is for the community. Because, you know, as Amin mentioned, you know, is compliance most important or is return most important? We may have a different thought process from a management side on what is the most important because of potential issues that are going on in your day-to-day. So really focusing on communication between each other helps merge the goals together and you strategize a little bit more on what needs to become the priority. And you agree on those goals so that you're working for the same end result that makes everybody happy. We've had multiple situations, not necessarily with Janasco, but where we think a certain item should be the goal, and that's not the goal of Amin. And we need to make sure that, whatever we're focused on is what his goals are, or what Janasco's goals are for the developments.
Yeah, and I would really encourage, I don't know who, whoever listens to this, either live or in the future, I highly encourage, from a developer standpoint, if you don't have your own property management company, when you're looking to acquire a property, you really want to be speaking with the property management company that you plan on using in the future to say, hey, these are the operating expenses that we'd like to get at, or tell us the operating expenses that you think this property would be viable for, and what are our lease up and marketing strategies. And you really want your property management partner to be in lockstep with your strategy before you actually implement or purchase the property, which makes asset management that much easier during the stabilization phase. Why don't you go on to the next one? So, our relationship has been great, right? When we are honest and transparent with KMG about our goals and objectives, and they are honest and transparent about their goals and objectives, what we've found is that it really has developed trust between the developer and the property manager. It also shows clear communication and goals. Like, one of the things that we do, I'm giving you all of this stuff so that asset management can become easy when you actually have the property. Okay, we'll get to what we do on the asset management side in a minute, but these are the precursor steps to ensure that you have an easy your asset manager has a happy life when the property is actually theirs. One of the main things that I would stress is that after we purchase the property and we've gone through construction, lease up has occurred. Well, no, there's 2 times we meet. When we purchase the property, we actually go to the property staff with our asset manager, and we say, guys, here's our goals and expectations. The regionals are on board. We just want to communicate to you what our metrics are and what we're looking at on a month-to-month basis to ensure that the property operates well. We do that at the moment that we close, and then we also do that at the moment that we're qualified occupied. So when you go through construction and then you go through lease up, now my development department is pretty much done and we're on to the next deal. But our kind of like last handoff meeting is with development, ownership, asset management on the development side, and then property management, including the site manager and the maintenance folks. And we say, okay, here's what we're looking for. And it's your baby now, it's stabilization period. All right, we'll be watching you. So that's really what we do. You can go to the next one. Of course, there have always been, it's been a learning process, and there have always been hiccups in what we've done. There was one deal that we did where, and we just made a mistake. Both Janasco Development Company and KMG. I'll never forget this. We made a mistake on one expense line item, and what it did was it delayed refinancing. What we anticipated the insurance estimates would be, and really, I guess we could maybe blame our insurance carrier, but what we anticipated the insurance estimates to be it differed from one year to the next. And what that did was that affected our NOI. And then, for a period of time, it delayed our ability to refinance into a 223F. So it's important that, you right the ship, and you can quickly identify where we made a mistake and why, and then in the future we just don't have that again. This has never happened, but there could be instances where there could be a lack of clarity around vendor involvement and payment procedures, right? How are, why is one of the things that we do at Janasco Development Company is we track all of our vendor contracts. So KMG tracks it, but then we look over KMG. And some of the things that we've noticed is we've been like, well, wait, why is our lawn and landscaping contract over at this property, 20% or 30% higher than the lawn and landscaping contract over at this property? Or, there's a deal up in Sault Ste. Marie where I'm looking at the snow removal contract and I was like, you've got to be kidding me. There's no way. There's not that much snow. Nobody's pushing that much snow for this much cost. And so we drilled down into it and we saw, what they were doing. But the point here is that if you don't have a great relationship with your management company, or if your management company is giving you vague and unclear and opaque information, well, then that obviously is going to lead to operational problems and action plan lists. So let me get into action plans for a minute. Like I said, we quantify the health of every single property every month, and we have metrics. And I'll just give you an example. One of the things we learned was, let's just take vacancy rate for a moment. One of the things that we realized was on the first page of our monthly operating report, we saw that there was a vacancy rate and it said 100% occupied, right? But then we knew that you can really calculate vacancy rate in three ways. You can calculate vacancy rate in a point in time of physical occupancy. You can calculate vacancy rate in days, meaning of 30 days, how many days was a unit vacant over a 30-day period. And you can calculate vacancy rate in dollars, right? Like we're supposed to get this much. How much money did we lose because of vacant days, or vacancy rate in dollars, or economic vacancy? And so what we did at Janasco Development Company is we said, there's three ways to look at vacancy rate. Let's track all three of them, but let's prioritize vacancy rate in dollars more than vacancy rate in a point in time, right? Because I care about vacancy rate in dollars. I could be 10% physically occupied, but if I'm getting 100% of what I anticipated in revenue, hey, now KMG might be, looking at compliance and looking at me sideways, but I'm happy from a return standpoint, right? And so what we do is, if a property, let's say a property is 100% occupied, but it's not meeting our vacancy rate in dollars or our economic occupancy metric. Well, then what we do, and if it trends over a certain period of months, what we do is we put it on an action plan. And we have an online cloud-based system that we basically invented. And then we share that with the property manager and the regional manager for the property management company. And our asset manager will put that metric on this action plan and then work with the property manager or the regional manager to identify why we're not achieving that metric, and then try to rectify the solution. And that is a big way that Janasco Development Company's asset management department communicates with property staff and regional staff. You can go on to the next one. Probably, yep, here it is. Yeah, so right here, I just spoke about this slide right here. But yeah, this is it. This is our action plan template. This is what we do. And you can go to the next slide. So how does our asset management and its asset management department review the property? Besides our quantitative analysis, which is our proprietary and kind of confidential stuff, we do have, a desk review procedure and a site review procedure. So within the desk review, all we're doing is collecting data. We're looking at financials. We're reviewing the CNA, which is really, really big. Don't forget about that dang on CNA. And our standard of righteousness is the closing pro forma. Period. End of story. Every quarterly meeting we have, every annual budget meeting we have, everything we do tries to center around the closing pro forma, because that's how everybody, the state of Michigan, ownership, lenders, that's how we all underwrote this deal, and we wanted to perform. And so if you don't have that closing pro forma, what's your standard of right? What's your standard or your benchmark to really assess how the property is performing from a quantitative standpoint? I'm not really worried about KMG and compliance. They've got that down pat, right? They know how to do tenant income certifications. They know how to report annual stuff to MISTA. So I'm more focused on, and my shop is more focused on, is the property being managed well according to the closing pro forma? Are we beating? You can keep going. The other desk review procedures that our asset management looks at is just, we look at any sort of correspondence between agents. So not only do we look at the financials, but we look at any sort of correspondence between MISTA, HUD, others. What's up with our operating agreements? Are there any resident concerns that are tracked through property management software? All the asset manager is doing is digesting all of the information from a desk review standpoint. You can keep going. This is a big one. Vendor concerns. Are there accounts payable? If there are delays, every single month, KMG sends us, of course, an accounts payable report to make sure, we look to see if there are anything, we're really concentrating on anything's past 30 days, what's going on there. We utilize Real Page One Site. And so we look at those maintenance reports. We look at, of course, the accounts receivable. We look at unit turnover reports. We look at work order status reports. We look at all that stuff just to make sure that, we're jiving with our original goals and objectives. We used to have an Investor Central. Now it's turned into Business Intelligence. One of the things that we did was we knew that a lot of our syndicators used Investor Central as a means to track their portfolio. And so I was like, hey, we want to see things the way our syndicators see them, right? We want to be able to look at things the way our investors see them. So let's go get Investor Central. And so we got Investor Central, learned how the investors, looked at the properties the way the investors look at them. And then we also have something called Business Intelligence. You can keep going.
I just want to jump in and add to this too, is, as the developer is doing the reviews, you want to make sure that as an agent, we're communicating everything, because a lot of times management agents just, we just do what we do, right? And we handle the day-to-day operations, and there's things that are done that may not be communicated back to the developer or to the client. We just roll forward and we're doing things. So it takes a little bit more communication on the management end as well, so that when the asset manager's doing their review, they know if there are issues from a payable standpoint, or they have some of that detail that you can talk about during their reviews.
Absolutely. I mean, and it's funny when we first did this, you know, I had to get a grip on everything that could be reported. And my background is data. I'm all about data and turning data into information. And one of the things that I had to do way back in the day was I literally printed out all of the reports that one site had, just to understand what one site could report on. And then that also helped me to understand the data that can be put into one site, into the property management software, and if the data has been put in properly. And of course, KMG is doing a bang up job, and it's been great. But from an ownership standpoint, you really have to understand what information you should be looking at, or what information is out there, and then compare that with your own internal goals and objectives. The asset managers, after they digest all that information, they organize it. They look for any sort of declining trends. They look for, really, our budget deviations are 5%, not 10%. We have an internal risk rating score. And then if there are deviations or declining trends, then we throw that onto the action plan, and we just work it out. We work it out with property management and say, hey, what are you doing? One of the things we caught really, really early on, and it's not a knock. One of the things we looked at was, and I may be telling you guys too much, but I don't really care. One of the things we looked at was make ready time. And one of the things that we found were, at some properties, not all properties, was that, we have a criteria for make ready and how fast we want a property to be made ready once a property's been vacated. And we saw that some properties were just Johnny on the spot, meeting our criteria all day long. Other properties had these really long make ready times. And we were like, yo, what's up with that? Why are you doing it that, And we quickly learned that they didn't make the unit ready until they thought that they had a resident ready to move in. And very quickly we got on them, both regional and ownership got on them to say, no. That's not how we play this game. We want that unit made ready for a person that just walks in and immediately needs to be occupied. And so we were able to identify that at some properties, and then very quickly clean that up. You can go to the next slide. Yeah. Depending on the metric score of the property is really the level of involvement that our asset management really plays with these properties. But I can tell you, if there are action plans that are that we really want to start paying really, really close attention to, you'll see the asset manager may possibly have weekly calls with property staff or the regional. That's few and far between. There's definitely quarterly meetings with regionals, property, and ownership. And then I have myself and Mary, the other owner, and Janasco's CFO, we have monthly meetings with the president of KMG to just make sure that everything's cool from a real high level standpoint. But I can't emphasize enough the level of communication and interaction is critical between the property management company and the owner/developer. And we also require that answers are back to us if we have questions within 72 hours. Yeah, this is just other stuff we do. You can keep going. All right, so this has never happened for Janasco Development Company, but let's just say that a property is doing very, very poor. We have gone through the action plan and we're not seeing results. And what do we do, right? And so the first thing we do is we hire outside third-party firms. If KMG isn't doing a good job, well, then probably this is, now, mind you, this has never happened. We would start to say, hey, we're gonna defer management fee. We're gonna possibly hire an outside occupancy or marketing firm if lease up is the problem. And we might, go to a construction company to get some repairs and maintenance work done if capital needs or something is a problem and the site and the maintenance staff can't get it done. Then if none of that works, then all right, let's talk about replacing the site level employees, right, and re-implement the action plan and see if that's good. If the replacement level employees don't work, well, then you've got a capital call from ownership, right, to talk about additional money that needs to go in. And then if all that fails, then you remove the management company, right, and then you find somebody else, and you just go from there. And then if the management company if the new management company doesn't work, then let's go sell this bad boy and get out of this property and kind of make sure that we're good. So that's if the crap hits the fan, kind of how do we get to an exit strategy? And this is our process in doing so.
I think one of the other things I would add is there, you're going through all these steps from a management standpoint. One thing that is key, at least for us at KMG Prestige, is that we're transparent. So, as the days progress and you're doing your daily thing, mistakes happen. And it just happens, right? So when that happens, you have to be transparent, or your agent needs to be transparent with you as the developer or the client, so that you can have those deeper conversations of, okay, we screwed up, we made a mistake, this is what happened, and how do we fix it? And really, this is what our plan is to fix it. And the other thing that I would say from a management standpoint is when asset management is involved the way the Janasco team is, it's easy for some regionals or some team members to almost assume that the client or our client or you as a developer are doing some of that work. And it's really important that whoever is the regional manager of the property, they're focusing on the solutions and coming to you as the developer, the owner, with the overall solution to strategize. Certainly have the conversation that, hey, we've got a problem, this is what we're working on, to give the kind of a heads up of what you're looking at. But you want to make sure that your agent isn't focusing on just kind of dropping the hot potato in your lap because asset management is so involved. They should, we still focus to bid everything out, find out what that solution is, so that when we're coming to Janasco, we're providing not only what the problem is, but a potential solution for discussion on.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we rely on those solutions, right? Because, we're good at diagnosing a problem, but, we have solutions in our back pocket. But as you grow in your relationship with your property management company, well, then you can start to track what solutions work and then apply those to other deals. And that's just what you do. I don't know if there's a slide after this, but you can keep.
Contact information.
All right, and that's our presentation in a nutshell. I guess we have 20 minutes for questions.
What questions do folks have? I don't see anything in the chat yet, but what questions does anybody have for me or Joe or or anything around the lines of operations?
Hey, this is Mark Meyer, Develop Detroit. One of the questions that I have, obviously you're using KMG Prestige for your property management and your asset management. How do you keep them separate? Because asset management protects the value of the property, protects the owners. Property management manages the day-to-day. How do you keep those separate, utilizing the same organization?
Sure. Well, asset management, that's a great question. Asset management, are employees that are hired by Janasco Development Company. They are not KMG staff. They are not,
Okay.
And so I have an asset management team that looks at all the reports and digests all that information and puts things into our action plan and our template. And then we work with the regionals and the property management. So our asset management teams work with the regionals and site staff. And I, as an owner, work with the president and the regionals. The president on a monthly basis for high level stuff, the regionals on a quarterly basis.
Okay, I thought you introduced Joe as somebody from KMG Prestige, and he is the asset manager.
No, Joe is from KMG. Well, Joe, why don't you say who you are? Joe's a head honcho over at KMG.
All right, so yes, Mark, I am from KMG Prestige. I'm a regional vice president for KMG, but we are solely the management agent for the Janasco, for some of the Janasco portfolio.
Right.
There's a separation of duties there. We handle the management end of it, and then a means team at Janasco handles the asset management side.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I had the disconnect there.
Today is really to give the management side of it, because when developers have asset management in place, it can create some friction between the management agent and the developer. And we have found a process that works really well, that has really streamlined the process for us.
Right. Great. Thank you.
So there's a question in the chat. I'll pose it to you, Amin and Joe. It says, do you know if MISTA keeps a scorecard or performance rating system on the overall performance of a management company? I specifically said I kick it to you guys instead of me just answering that. So I don't work there anymore, but go ahead.
Tell you what happened. I'll tell you pre-Mike Witt days, okay? There was a time when we were developing our asset management policies and procedures. And one of the first things we did was we ran the mission and we're like, hey, what are y'all looking at? And MISTA was like, dude, we care about compliance. We just care about, we look at reserves. We want to make sure your reserves are right. We do have a watch list. But if you're paying the bills and submitting the paperwork on time, if you get your surplus cash, that's your responsibility, right? And so I was kind of like, whoa, wait a minute. MISTA, y'all aren't comparing the closing pro forma with operations? And they're like, nope. And so very quickly I realized, there it is. That's my job. That's one of the key responsibilities of the owner and developer, not even really the property management company, but the owner and developer needs to be concerned about that. And so that's our take. But miss a loan payment, which we haven't done, but have a capital needs assessment come in that says that you're underfunded. Oh, MISTA sees that. You know what I'm saying? And they'll take corrective action to make sure that that's good.
There's also benchmarks from a management standpoint. Obviously, as Amin already mentioned, hitting compliance-related items. We actually we're doing meetings with MISTA on a frequency as well. So, they look at their desk reviews as well of each property and the overall performance of the property under the direction of the management agent. So those are always part of their review on any new property joining into a management company, or if MSHA has to give approval on it.
Yeah, so I can add to that. They don't keep a specific scorecard for management companies. They do risk ratings for properties, but it's property performance specific and not necessarily for a management company. They don't really rate management companies. I think they try to keep it fair and even across the board. I can say on our side at Scenario, on the syndicator side, we also do a risk rating, but it's performance based of the project, not necessarily the management company. I mean, we could have opinions on which management companies do better than others, but not necessarily a rating score for them.
And I mean, you said something about the fact that MSHA doesn't compare to the original pro forma. Isn't that more your job and the investor's job to go to Mike's seminar next week on year 15? You want to make sure that the investor's getting the returns that they had expected with those types of comparisons to pro forma.
Agree 100%. Agree 100%. Really, surplus cash is my responsibility, right? As the owner.
Right.
And it's not really MSHA's,
It's their responsibility too when they want 50% of the excess cash flow.
Yeah, right. Yeah. But they'll take it out of your hide, in year 15. You know what I'm saying? So even if you're not performing, even if you're not performing, during the 15 years, when you go to sell that property, best believe they're going to try to, they're going to take it. So, my responsibility as an owner during the stabilization phase is, of course, ensuring that, we're compliant, but that's really, in my opinion, KMG's, that's why we hired KMG. And then it's my responsibility to ensure that, we're kind of getting the cash that we expected to get, and then the value of the property as well. And then when you get to year 15, you've got an exit, you've got a recycling or a disposition strategy that's commensurate to what you expected.
Great, thank you.
And I would say, I mean, just to add to that, like MSHA's expectation that would be that the owner would be doing those things, right? Like they look at it more from a regulatory compliance standpoint, and then also in the lens of a lender. So I would say, since nobody from MSHA is here, that their overall goal would be those two things, and leave you getting cash flow up to the owner. So I would caution anybody who's not operating that way as an owner, probably should, because MSHA's not looking out for it. So
Right.
Your syndicator watches that, but MSHA's not.
Right.
I mean, we have a number of people that I've actually spoken to on this call that have contemplated self-management, and they're developers. And as a developer, have you ever thought about managing your own properties?
Of course I have. Of course I have. And of course we're honest and open with KMG about that situation. I kind of live by the motto, overhead ain't nothing but ego. And I'm very slow to vertically integrate. We're at 3,100 units. Could we have a self-performing property management company? Yes, but in all honesty, KMG is doing such a bang-up job. I have other priorities that trump, vertically integrating into my own property management company. When that time comes, there are honest and open and frank discussions that you have with the property. There was a time when we were considering it, and we were talking to KMG about it. And KMG was on board. They said, hey, listen, hey, you got to do what you got to do, and we were talking about a transition strategy. But, as we got a little bit further along in the discussions, we started to realize that, wow, KMG does a lot. And I don't want to dilute the core competency of Janasco Development Company when it comes to asset acquisition and value add strategies by trying to take on something that is not our true core competency. So could there be a time that we have so many units that it just makes sense to bring all of that in-house? Yeah, but now, even though we have 3,100 units, and if we brought it all in-house, we could make a small profit. We've just decided that, KMG is doing such a good job and the relationship is working so well that it just doesn't make sense to do that. So even if it's the right thing, if it's the wrong time, it's the wrong thing. You know what I'm saying? Maybe you don't get it. I'll say that again. The right thing at the wrong time is the wrong thing. So that's been my approach. And it's not about money. It's not about money. And I quickly learned that property management is not about a money-making endeavor. That should be kind of like the last thing on your mind if you're considering, having your own property management company. But you really want to be concerned about implementing your own property management company, and will that hinder your other lines of business or the things that you're really, really good at? And what I've determined at Janasco Development Company is that, we can't do it as good or better than KMG. And so we're just not going to. And we're just going to keep going the way we go. I would also say, if you're an owner contemplating having your own property management company, I would say crawl before you walk, right? You might want to consider, looking at maybe taking over the insurance first, right? And seeing if your portfolio can beat a property management company's umbrella policy, if your umbrella policy could beat a property management company's umbrella policy. And then maybe if it can, then maybe you want to talk about maybe transitioning that over. Maybe you want to talk about I would highly recommend first getting your own asset manager or an asset management team first and foremost. Before you even go into property management, you should have an asset management team that works closely with the property management company, and then kind of feel it out there. And then you might want to start taking on other parts of third-party responsibility that maybe your property management company has. And then, once you get to maybe a critical mass, or you just feel comfortable that you have enough so that your other core competencies aren't diluted, then you want to have that very frank and open, and I'm talking a year or two in advance, right? To ensure that, you do have or maybe you only want to take on a couple properties on your own at first, or 8, or something like that. But I highly discourage any developer that is currently doing third-party property management to just say, I've got 500 units, I'm going to go do this myself. I just think that's a bad decision.
What other questions does anybody have for anybody else? Not hearing any. You guys must have done a bang-up job covering it all. Well, I'd like to thank everybody for coming. Definitely to Amin and to Joe for the presentation and the information. It was definitely a lot to take in, and hopefully got people thinking about some different things when it comes to operating your property. I know we've talked, Josh and I, when we put these together with Aaron, we're talking, not every deal is going to be able to preserve. So at some point, we wanted to have a conversation about how to just continue to operate. And I think this is a good stepping point for that. So I appreciate the information. Amin and Joe, it was great.
No problem. Thanks for having us.
Yeah. With that, that concludes our 5th session. We've got the last one next Wednesday. That'll be our 6th session about year 15 information. So we look forward to everybody coming to that. I believe if the appointment has not gone out, it should go out the next day or two with the Zoom link. Erin's nodding her head yes. Yep. So it'll be going out in a couple days. So be on the lookout for that. And we'll see everybody next week.
See you later.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.